I'm sure I can hear Tancred's voice in there, because I'm hoping that Tancred is amongst these. Well, I'm back in my own garden now, and I still think that in the background there, in the Parliament of Rooks, I can hear his call every now and again. Even the cat, Florence, is sometimes looking around thinking, oh, is he on his way back again? But here's some shots of Tancred, the rook, on his last day when he was with us here, playing with this allium stalk here, and a plant label that he plucked up out of the Grecian urn in the middle of the garden there. He seemed to go for anything that was red, particularly the petals of a big floppy poppy. He went for those. And I had to take to wearing a hat around the garden for obvious reasons all the time. I found him just a month ago in amongst some spent daffodils and crocosmia, just over there, in fact. And I was bewildered about how he got there. At that time, he was in quite a state, really. He was very weak. He got feathers, primaries, but most of his other feathers were still to develop. He got the sort of fluffy stuff. But he was pretty helpless, really. I put him in a box. We gave him just a tiny bit of water to get him upright and going. And started to feed him, at first keeping him in a sort of an orange box nest contraption in the conservatory. He seemed to be very comfortable in there, and was feeding him the remains of Florence the cat's cat food, a little bit of mince from time to time. He didn't do badly. We gave him some fat balls, mealworms he came to love. You know, he ate those like crisps, we thought. As I said, he absolutely adored bananas. He spent most of the time sitting in the same tree in the garden, howling like a banshee, of course. And quite quickly he came to fly, and I thought he flew rather like a hurled Bible, a bit like that. But gradually he got stronger and stronger, and he could swoop down from things at first. It took him quite a long time to be able to climb effectively. But he took to flying onto the conservatory roof, where he stomped around like something in jackboots. He did absolutely stomping around. Very interestingly, all the way through, Tancred appeared to be watched, monitored, even supervised by a pair of adult rooks nearby. There they sat on a neighbour's TV aerial, or in a large fir tree. I woke up in the morning and opened the curtains, and I could see what I thought was Tancred consorting with birds of his own kind, and that raised my spirits about his future. Tancred explored the garden pretty comprehensively. He went to the pond, and he played with the flowers, and he loved to peck about between the pots, and we reckon he soon got to learn how to use his beak and to pick up little creatures and bits and bobs. It took quite some time actually before he could not only learn to peck, but manipulate his tongue inside his beak and bring food back from the tweezers that he'd got and chuck it down his gullet. And a couple of days ago, on the day when I filmed him playing with that allium stalk there, off he went for a period into the neighbouring gardens, maybe even towards the rookery. And we came back and made a pot of tea and sat in the garden. And after about an hour, we saw 3 or 4 rooks fly in a giant circle overhead, and I remember saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if one of those was Tancred? And believe it or not, he came down and landed on the table and sat with us, howling as usual. And that afternoon, I was watering some plants and he was sitting on my head while I was doing it. Well, and the next morning he'd gone, and I'm absolutely convinced that he's back there in the rookery, only about 800 yards away over there along the canal, and I really am sure that I can hear his call from time to time. It's very distinctive. They say, of course, that you always recognise the cry of your own children. That he did love bananas. Now, he's not going to get bananas now out there in the wild, in the rookery over there. So I hope perhaps that's something of a memory that I've left him with that he could cherish all his life. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, the garden feels incredibly quiet without him, even though I sort of think I can hear him over there. Maybe wishful thinking, we don't know, but I think I do. But I can't help thinking that at some point he might pop down again and come and see us. I've never found out whether Tancred was a he or a she. Maybe in the future he or she will introduce us to his offspring or her offspring. And that might give us a clue. Who knows? But it's just been a remarkable experience. And that I'm convinced that he or she is back in the rookery makes me really happy.